having me. In preparation for the talk, I thought, am I first going to do a PowerPoint presentation and put up some slides, but I decided not to, just because I think it's Friday afternoon and it's easier to talk and tell a story, and at the same time really get some questions. I think you're here because you want to learn something, or maybe there's something you want to know. Obviously a lot of people are passionate about football, so that may be the reason why you came. So I thought maybe just to break the talk into a couple of blocks. Firstly, just to give you a bit of history about me, tell you a little bit about where I've come from and why I'm here today. Also just to tell you about the business, some of the challenges, some of the stumbling blocks, some of the successes, also about the failures. I think that's always important to understand why and how one bounces back from them, because it's not always so easy to pick yourself up if you've been beaten to the floor. And in business and entrepreneurial spirit, you're always going to have that along the way. And then the last block, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my involvement in the Stellenbosch University, because I feel that we're doing something really powerful with the university as a business around football. I think we're getting to a very interesting space around the football development program. On Thursday night is the Discovery Sports Awards, and we've been nominated as one of the top 5 sports development programs of the year. And I think for Stellenbosch University, that's a big thing. Not only from a brand perspective, but also from an ability to show people what can be done. You know, 4 years ago when I had the first meeting at the university, it was kind of a pipe dream, and now we're seeing it really come to fruition. So, to start off with me, who am I? I'm 41 years old. I'm based in Johannesburg. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have 2 girls, 6 and 8 years old. Everybody asks me, doesn't that disappoint you? You know, you're mad about football. You should have had boys. And I'm quite happy that I don't have to go to the field every Saturday and Sunday and get involved in football, because I think it would drive me quite crazy. Because if I see now more and more of my friends now, kids are getting involved in soccer, and every 5 minutes they're phoning. Can they have a spare coach? What should they be doing? Asking for tips, because they want their kids to do well and get to the pinnacle of football. And it just shows you the kind of passion that drives with football, from small to old, from business and other. And it really is, for me, the lifeblood of me. I started playing soccer when I was 5 years old. I started at the under-6 F team at Belfort Park Football Club. So if any of you are starting out, you've got to start at the bottom if you want to grow. And the thing about football for me, what I loved was the teamwork and the camaraderie, and looking forward to something and going to a club every week and making new friends. And it became very social. And I think that for me is something that's very important from team sports. And still today in my business, always thinking about the nature of the team and how do you all get on with each other, because all of those team parts have to work together quite closely if you're going to have any kind of success. The amazing thing is that I'm actually still friendly with a lot of those guys that we played soccer with back 20, 30 years ago, because you form an incredible bond. It's twice a week training, it's a weekend match. Often the parents become friendly and you become friendly. So team sports is a very, very powerful message for us, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But the Belfort Park days were interesting for me, because I developed a real passion for soccer, and it was wasn't sure what it was, but nothing else attracted interest for me. I never played cricket, I never played tennis, I swam a little bit, but soccer was always my thing. I just really enjoyed it, and I even remember getting up early on a Sunday morning and putting on my soccer kit and going to the garden and kicking and playing, and just complete fascination with football. And I mean, today it's how I earn a living, and I built a business out of that. And I think one of the lessons for me is that if all jobs paid the same, this is what I would do. And that's a powerful thing to say, because I deal with a lot of people all the time who dislike their jobs, or they chase other things in the evening because work's not making them excited, they're not motivated, they're not driven by what they do. And for me, I get up every morning, I can't wait to get to work. It's, you know, and my wife always says, I can't believe how excited you are to go to work. And often I think, well, I don't see it as a job, which is strange. But at the end of the day, I am excited, you know, excited about it. But at the same time, I do have a board of directors. We are a business that needs to make money. So at the end of the day, one's got to find that balance. So throughout school, I was really passionate about football, really, really passionate about it. And I played at all levels, at provincial level, and I loved it. That was for me what was exciting. And when I was 16, I decided that I wanted to start to earn some money, as we all do. We need to do extra jobs. And I was quite lucky. I got involved in coaching soccer with late Roy Bailey, Gary Bailey, who talks on TV. His late dad was running coaching clinics. and a friend of mine went to him and said, can we help pick up balls, put down cones, and he said, yes, come along. And that's when I started getting a real passion for coaching. And I started to realize that there's various channels within football and various channels in the industry. Where am I going to find myself? And I completed matric, and then I started studying at university. I was at Wits in first year, and I passed 1 subject out of 5 in first year, which is not a great rate at all. And the big reason why I wasn't at all compelled to study, I was just focused on football, and I was starting to coach more. And during that year, I started a business called Little Champs, which was a fine and gross motor skill program for very young kids. And the reason why I started that business with a good friend was that when we were coaching football, it was interesting because often you found kids were pushed into sport by parents because dad was crazy about soccer, so now you must be crazy about soccer, and the kid would arrive and they didn't really want to be there. And fundamentally, when a kid's brought in at 6 or 7 and expected to play and they don't have any fundamental base, they're not very good. And when you're not good and you're in the B and C team, you don't enjoy it as much. You know, in your A team and you're competitive, it's different. So Little Champs became a very interesting first business for us because we were trying to educate very small kids between the ages of 3 and 6 in fine and gross motor skill. So how to kick and how to trap and how to catch and how to do all of those kind of things, because it became fundamental to the sporting base. And technical ability was something that I realized very early on was very critical for young players. And after the first year of university, I left Wits and I went to UNISA, because I just felt that it gave me more flexibility, and I was studying to be a CA. That was kind of the career path or choice that I took. But I was consumed by football, starting to work more in the holidays, coaching clinics, growing Little Champs as a business. I eventually completed my my undergrad degree. I did a BCom, it was called at university, and then I started studying honours to do BCom honours, and obviously then I was going down the CA route and about to do articles, and I did a few VAC works, and then I finished university, I got my honours, and now what? So now I was crossroads. What am I going to do? Do I start articles? Do I start a business? I wasn't really sure what to do, and I come from a family where my dad wasn't educated, my mom neither, so like this was a big thing for me to study, and now I must go do articles and become a CA and follow that path, which was quite safe and quite easy. And I didn't really want to do that because I was just compelled to get involved in football, and I went for a few interviews, and at the time there weren't a lot of established football management or even sports marketing businesses in South Africa. I mean, the industry per se is quite new, and there wasn't a lot that I could do, so I didn't really know what to do, and I thought, well, I better start working, otherwise where am I going to go? And I put my CV out, and I went for a few interviews, and eventually I joined F&B in corporate finance in Joburg at Bank City. And from the first second I walked in, I realized that this wasn't for me. It was a crazy culture. Arrive at 8:30, at 10:30 there's tea, then there's lunch, and at 4:30 there's 1,000 people standing at the lift to get out of there, and at 5 o'clock there's no one in the offices at all. There's no one there, no one works. This is banking, and I'm thinking, is this what I want to do with my life? And first month, second month, third month, and then I was sent out to Kimberley. I remember it really well. In the bank car, we were doing a SPAR financing deal, and it wasn't an easy drive. And on the way home, I thought to myself, is this what I'm going to do? Drive and be a banker, and every day they're offering you better rates to do this and buy a house and take a loan, and people are getting sucked in around it. And I came home, I said, that's it, I can't do it, I'm resigning. And I went to my parents, I said, look, I'm leaving the bank. He said, what's going on? Are you mad? You've got a good job, you've got a car, you're earning a salary, what's wrong with you? What are you going to do? No, I want to get into football. Well, that was just the craziest thing my parents had ever heard. What's wrong with you? There was never an entrepreneurial culture in our house at all. And I think it's quite interesting now that I've grown up in a more entrepreneurial culture and see friends who have done really well in business and see what an entrepreneurial culture is at home, where there's certain friends of mine that at dinner table, it's all about equity and about stock and private equity and business and profit and loss, and there was never that discussion at our table, never. My dad wasn't that kind of guy, my mom neither, so business wasn't really something that I grew up with. And it's interesting because if you look at certain people who are really successful in business, some are really groomed for it. Every single day of their lives, that's all they hear. Dad's in a meeting, dad's in a board meeting, he's on this, they're groomed in a particular way. So in many ways, I had no business skill. None whatsoever. But I was mad about soccer, and I knew I didn't work at the bank, so now what do I do? So now I'm starting to think, well, what can I do? What skills do I have? Well, I've got an honors degree in accounts, but that's not really going to help me because I'm not really going to do anything much with that. So I decided to start a football coaching business. So going back to the roots, back to the coaching, back to the technical love of the game, and I started finding players that needed better and more specialized coaching and charging parents for that, because I really enjoyed that. I would go down to games and watch players and see that some of them technically weren't very good, and I would speak to parents and say, do you want to come for extra football lessons? Which was quite different and strange. People weren't used to that, because you got coached as a team, as a club or a school, and there was never really individualized coaching training. You did that in tennis and maybe in golf. That was an individualized sport, so people went for extra coaching. But in soccer, it didn't exist. It was weird, it was strange. Anyway, I found a few clients and started working and making money, and Little Champs as a business was growing, and I decided that I needed to kind of professionalize this thing, so we took an office in Killarney, and a few friends got together and we started one of our first businesses that kind of took ownership of Little Champs, which was called the Sports Construction Corporation, of all names. And it was really exciting, but I started to get a knack that this is something I wanted to do. But as all businesses, you start to realize at the end of the month, you look and think, not so much money in the account, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Do I keep going? What do I do? Do I find home for a loan? What goes on? And I wasn't sure what to do. And I didn't really have a big network of mentors or people around. Parents didn't really understand the journey I was on. I think if you still ask my mom what do I do, I don't think she's sure, to be honest. I don't think she knows. If she asked her, if you phoned her now, she probably still not sure. Something in soccer, but she's just not sure. And it's easier that way because it becomes complicated to explain. And just chugged along slowly. And then in February of 1999, a good friend of mine that I'd been working with said to me, I'm setting up a lunch with a friend of mine. He's a guy who had just listed a business, so he had some real cash to burn. He was crazy about soccer, a big Manchester United fan. His name is Sean. And he said, let's go and meet him, and you've got to come up with an idea. I'm sure that he's the kind of guy that could maybe be the seed funder for the business. And I thought, okay, and anyway we went, and it's very interesting, and the graphic recall I have of some of these moments, and I think it becomes important because they become key moments in time that you remember and you refer back to, that I think for me very important lessons, because like I said earlier, no mentoring, no real business experience, but trying to find my way in business was not so easy. Anyway, I went to meet Sean. It was a Saturday afternoon at the Lancey's. It was a coffee bar in Santon, and my friend Stan, who Anita knows, he came fashionably late. He's always late. Anyway, Sean and I started talking, and we spoke, and he was asking a million questions about soccer, and I remember walking out and I said, have a good weekend, and we left. And Monday morning he phones me and says, that conversation we had around the football, what do you think it's going to cost to start the business? I need a budget. So it was like quite strange. Spoken to him, now he's asking, and I haven't been through this before, so it's all new, completely new. Don't know what to do. Go home, start thinking a budget. What do I need? How does that all work? And I remember putting the budget together and then sending it to him by fax, because I don't think email was starting. I don't think I had an email address at the time. And I sent him the fax and said, right, this is the budget. And then a few minutes later he phoned me and said, look, I've got the budget. He said, on Wednesday morning you must go to Nedbank Santon and you must ask for Greg Higgins, who's the bank manager there, and there's an account open, and that money you need, it's there. And that was it. Not a contract, not a shareholders agreement, not a business plan, nothing. And it's an interesting story, and I tell it all the time because some people don't believe it, because today to raise money is not easy. It's hard work. But the fundamental for me was to think about Sean as a guy, and kind of the ethos and the way he does business. And 16 years later, he's still a shareholder in our business. He lives in London now, and I actually saw him a couple of weeks ago. And if you see the way that this guy does business, those are the kind of exciting things for me along the way that I've learned from. And that's one of the key lessons and threads that I want to say today, is that it's not always going to be easy for you to find the right kind of people that you gravitate towards, but you need to find one or two of those people that are ultimately going to give you the opportunity to grow. And firstly, for me, what was most exciting was to meet Sean. For him to say, I like what you're going to do and back me was a very powerful thing. Because every day when I get up in the morning, I want to be successful because I know that he gave me a chance. And you don't want to let anybody down. I'm sure we all feel the same way. If someone gave us a gap, that's important. The other thing about Sean was the trust and honesty. Whatever he said, he did. And that's a lesson too. Keep the small promises. You know, sometimes we promise big things, and I'll do this and do that, and at the end of the week, everyone's phoning because you didn't follow through on those kind of things. So the small promises, keep those promises. Follow up on them. Because when I see the way Sean behaved towards me, that's a particular way that I need to behave to others. Because that's an important lesson. Because if that's the way he treated me, then I have to treat people in a particular way. And that's a very important lesson for me because firstly, he's still involved in the business, and this guy is a multi-billionaire 6 or 7 times over. He doesn't have to worry about my small business, I can promise you. But when I phone him, he makes a time. At 10 o'clock, 9:59, he's sitting in the coffee place in London to meet. When we meet, his phone's off. When we talk to him, he's engaging. If I send him an email, he replies. And I think it's a particular principle because in today's time, so many people are too busy and no one returns call and they can't reply to emails. But I look at a guy like this who's really successful and backed many businesses, still finds the time for people along the way. So that's a big lesson. You know, to find the people, to help them, to mentor them. He was a big support network for me. So now I have the money, now I must start a business. What do I do? Got to register a company, got to get a shareholders agreement. All this stuff is foreign, completely. But the name was important. We didn't even have a name for the business. I met the guy on Saturday, Monday phoned for a budget, and Wednesday I'm at the bank and this guy, and I still got that first letter that the bank sends that the money was in the bank. I keep it because it's always an important lesson because history is very, very important, very. Because those things you go back to and remember. So now I've got to start the business, what do I do? So now it starts with a name. And everybody's got their own name and you're asking people what are you going to do. So eventually for me, Forward Zone was an important name for me because the 2 words are very critical for me in sport. One is forward, because especially in football, you're always moving forward if you're going to achieve something. And being in the zone is a very particular space in sport. So especially in football, also, you get into a particular zone where nobody can take you away or nobody can deviate you from what you want to achieve. So the words together became important, and that became the name. And the slogan was always moving forward, always in the zone. We still have that name and we registered it, and as the business has evolved, we actually changed our slogan now to the difference in football. And I'm going to tell you why, because that was a journey to get to that. So now we have a name and we have a slogan, and now we've got to start a business and we've got to write a business plan and what are we going to do. And we've got to start making money, we've got to get clients, and like any startup, this is all it is, it's a shell. So where do you start? What do you do? What was our focus? Our focus was we wanted to sign professional soccer athletes and be an agent because that was sexy. You'd turn on Sky Sports TV and you'd see all kinds of messages on the TV that players were trading for millions of pounds. You think, oh my goodness, I'm going to do that. I'm going to trade these players and I'm going to make millions of pounds. Until you start to realize the hard realities of business. One is that it's not so easy to make money. Number 2, it's not so easy to start a business. And number 3, it's very hard to get people to trust you. How do you get the first client if you've got no clients? Because the first thing people ask, you got other clients? Oh, I've got none. And I think, well, do I want to be involved with this person? And I think that becomes important for us all to remember is that we've got to remember the first person, the person that gives you the opportunity and gives you a client or even an opportunity for a client. And it was actually my wife's uncle. He was a lawyer and a player had come to see him. His name was Thabo Ngomeni. You probably know him. He went on to Captain Pirates and South Africa. He was actually our first client. He knew a lawyer, he knew a player, he needed some advice, and all of a sudden we had our first player. That was amazing. And then started to realize that, well, how are we going to make money now? We've got a player, we've got a client, but now you can't make money because an Adidas contract in those days, he would earn maybe 20,000 Rand a year, and we would get a small percentage and make a few hundred Rand and run a business of that. So now what were we going to do? And all of a sudden you start to realize that the focus and the desire that you wanted to start, all of a sudden get shifted. Because now you've got to make money, and what you really wanted to do, you've got to think, okay, what else do you do? And what happened was we started getting involved in other sports. So cricket, rugby, And that for me was not something I was really comfortable with, but it was to pay the bills, you needed to do that, which was very important. So we actually signed Graham Smith. He was our first client. Graham joined, he was our first cricket client. He joined us when he was still in matric at Cares. We were introduced to him by Jimmy Cook. He said, you've got to come see this guy play. He's going to captain South Africa one day. I said, oh really, Jimmy, you sure? I said, I'm 100% sure. We went to watch. I remember the game was at Wanderers and Graham scored 175 against the Nottinghamshire 11. And we met the parents and he actually joined our agency, which was a big thing. A.B. de Villiers, Jean de Villiers joined us with rugby. We had at one point all three South African captains were our clients. Ricardo Katzer, when he was captaining Bafana, he was at Supersport, he was one of our clients. Jean de Villiers, the Springbok rugby captain, and Graham Smith. All three national captains, unbelievable, that's amazing. We couldn't believe our luck. But really, the truth of the matter is I wasn't entirely happy. Why? Because I only want to do one thing. That's football. That's my love, that's my passion, that's what I want to do. And what was happening every Monday morning, I was coming to work, and the cricketer was phoning, and the rugby player was phoning, and the golfer, and the swimmer, and all of a sudden, I didn't know anything about any of those sports. Which brings me to a very important part of the discussion, which is focus. In any business, and anything you do, you need to focus on one thing. One thing only. Just become the best you can be at that thing. Nothing else must deviate. Because if you're going to try and be good at everything, it becomes impossible. And that's for me, bless you, and that for me what became important in 2005 and 2006 is I started to feel the business was spiraling out of control. There was too many sports, there was too much going on. We were doing poker events, tennis tournaments, we were doing so many things, and all of a sudden there were more people in the office. Some of them I didn't even know. The business was growing and I didn't have a handle on this place, and we were doing things we didn't like, and I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy because I wasn't enjoying coming to work every day, and that's not what I started out for. I wanted to get up every morning and go and do something I love. That was the most important thing for me that today is still a principle. Get up in the morning and try and do something that's not always easy, but that was an important principle, and during that time, that was a very difficult time for me in the business. And I remember that time very well. And often when someone phones me and says, oh, I've got a great rugby player interested, boom, the light goes on. 2005, 2006, all of these things, got to learn to say no. And the thing is, you can't get to a point to know that unless you experience some kind of pain. Like I said earlier, no business experience, no real business mentor. So now what? You're getting to a point where someone's telling you something, you're not sure, you're getting a bit of a gut, and that's important. When this thing starts to turn and tweak, you know you need to listen to a little bit. And in 2006, for me, I remember the year well, it was the worst year we had in our business. Because there was too much going on, I really didn't enjoy it. We ended up, in fact, selling a piece of our business, and my founding shareholder, who we started the business together, exited the business, and it was quite an emotional time. It was really emotional, and I wasn't enjoying going to work, getting up, and I started to think, what am I doing? Maybe I should have stayed at the bank. It was nice, I could have watched football on TV, had the bank car, everything would have been okay. And I started to realize that entrepreneurship is a very lonely place, very. Because when you come home and say, oh, the business is spiraling out of control and having a really bad day, things are terrible, can you help? No. So you come home with a different kind of story, and you tell people a different kind of story because you think differently about yourself, your own self-confidence. You start to think, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to make a success? What's going on? What's happening? And it became very clear for me that I needed to make a change. I needed to change because I could not take this anymore. Hundreds and hundreds of different calls, all multiple different levels of sport going on, and it wasn't for me. And at the end of 2006, I took a very, very hard decision. I called the shareholders. There's 4 board members that I have in my business, and I said to them, guys, look, this is my plan. I want to exit out of all other sports, and I want to do one thing only. I want to change the business to be football focused and do nothing else. I don't want to do anything else. Yeah, but what about the contracts, and we'd funded golfers, and that year, in fact, we lost the most money we've ever lost in our business. Why? Because we were funding golfers who were going overseas, we were funding tennis players, we were just all over the place with no focus. And I realized if I don't take a change, then the business potentially was going to close. Because it was spiraling out of control. And I was running the business myself. We don't have a very deep management board at the time, so I was doing my own thing and very unhappy. So I made the call and I made the change. And that's an important lesson for me, if I can share, that making sometimes a tough decision becomes very important, is not so easy. And sometimes you've either got to seek advice, or you've got to have mentors, or you've got to have people around that can maybe give you some advice. I didn't have a lot of those. And at that time I started to realize this lonely place, I needed to change. I needed to make a few changes if I'm going to take the business to the next level. Also, with South Africa winning the World Cup, I could get a sense that there was an interesting time brewing in football in South Africa. So at the end of 2006, I decided, right, restructuring and refocusing the business. Shareholders weren't happy at all. I said, we're writing off all our investments in other sports. Of course, they weren't happy. I said, but that's your choice. Either you stick with me and we go down this path, or quite frankly, let's close the business and I'm moving on. I'm not going to work anymore if I'm unhappy. Anyway, they backed me, and that's what we did. We changed the focus. I exited out of every single agreement with any other sports star that we had and focused only on football. Because that's what I want to do, and that's what I was passionate about. That was important. So in terms of starting a business, then getting to a point, you're always going to come to that crossroads. You're always going to have a point where you think, which way do I go, this way or that way? Because that's entrepreneurship. If you're in a business that you started yourself, and you're guiding and you're taking the roadmap and you're actually building each step yourself, you're going to find times where you're going to have to make a call and change direction. And sometimes you've got to take 2 steps back to go 4 forward. That's important. It doesn't matter to think you're always going forward and you're always growing and the numbers are big, because what are the fundamentals? The fundamentals, firstly, is, are you happy as a business owner and are you doing what you love? Number 2, if you look around at staff and at people that work with you, are they enjoying what they're doing? Are you leading people? Are you building people? What are you doing? So those 2 things became very important for me. And as we started to refocus the business, I decided that we needed to change what we were to the world. And that's why now our payoff line in our business is the difference in football. That became important for me because the word difference is very important. What is to be different? It's to do something differently, it's to behave differently, it's to have a different approach to something. And we also changed the colors and we changed our logo. We went orange because I loved orange. The logo was originally blue. Orange is my favorite color, and I decided to make a few changes that I wanted to do. And fundamentally, we wanted to get very involved in the World Cup. We had a few football players that we were representing and looking after, that we wanted to get involved in the World Cup because that was important. It was a big thing for South Africa, and what were we going to do? And I was lucky because I got to travel tremendously. Since the start of my business, every year I was doing 2 or 3 trips abroad, and I was getting a real opportunity to have a look and see what was going on in the global scope of business. And if I look back and I say, how could I have had these kind of opportunities doing what I love? I've been to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, you name the clubs, I've been there. Spent time at the clubs, lived in certain academies in Holland, lived in the digs to understand what goes on in football development, because if we're going to build a real business, we needed to understand all of the pieces, which was important for me. So we are chasing some international clients, and we were quite lucky in the build-up to the World Cup. We closed McDonald's as a client. The player escort program, all the little kids that walked on with all the players, we won that contract to coordinate all those players for Confederations Cup and for the World Cup. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but it is one of the most complicated pieces of the World Cup to manage. In the World Cup, there were 1,408 players, kids, that had to be coordinated from all over the country for all 64 games. It was a massive program. We completely managed that for McDonald's. They're still one of our clients. We look after another property for them. We won the Coca-Cola work for Copa and other related tournaments. And the big one for me that was really exciting is we won the contract for the Australian Football Federation to look after their South African operations. And the lesson for me there, and that's something I wanted to share as well, is around relationships. That all people you meet, you never know where you're going to go with them. And that's why our first impressions are very lasting, and it's important to set the right kind of tone with people. Because most of the people that I work with today, I've been working with for many years. If I run through our client list, Supersports has been a client of mine for 14 years. Discovery's been a client of mine for 7 years. McDonald's 7 years. Coca-Cola 8 years. Nike 5 years. We're no longer a client of theirs, but we were. Retention of clients was critical for me. And that's relationship based. So along the way with all the clubs that I met, and especially at Feyenoord Rotterdam, which was a very close client of mine, I was in Rotterdam all the time and I made real friends. In fact, still today, 10 or 12 years later, every single one of those people that I worked with, when they leave or change jobs, they'll send a mail. I'm here, I'm at this club, and that's where networking, I saw it on the wall in terms of one of the bubbles in the LaunchLab, networking is everything. Without people and without friends, can't do business. And most of the time, people want to do business with friends, or people they like, people they trust, and people who deliver. And through that network, we were very close to a guy at Feyenoord Rotterdam who got fired, and then he went to Australian Football Federation and became the technical director. And he was in a meeting in 2009, and they said, South Africa World Cup next year, what are we going to do? He said, you don't need to do anything. You're going to phone this guy, his name's Ashley, I know him from South Africa, and he's going to look after you in South Africa. And he called me and said, I've got an opportunity for you, would you want to do this? I said, are you joking? I'd love to do that because I knew what it meant for our business to have that kind of client. And I went to Sydney and I presented to the board and we won that client. And I can tell you honestly, and you can ask some of my staff that worked on it, it was the greatest program we've ever worked on. And some of the fundamentals for me still exist from what we learned from the way the Australians look after sports off field. Their administration isn't good, it's perfect. I remember the first meeting coming. 12 minutes, the meeting was at 12 o'clock and I arrived at 12:05, the door's locked. Knock on the door. She comes to the door, she says, what's wrong? I said, 12:12, she said, Australian time. 11:59, you're seating, 12 o'clock, the meeting starts. Now in football, people come 20 minutes, half an hour, if they arrive at the meeting. Some of you that are in football know that's a miracle. 12 o'clock was 12 o'clock, the meeting started. If the guy said, I'm going to email you back at 8 o'clock at 7:59, boom, there was a mail back. If they submitted an invoice and said you're getting paid on Monday, 1 second before the time it was there. Never did they go back on a word they said, ever. They were the best client we've ever had, and I've built very good relationships in that market, but the fastidious nature with which they manage sport off field shows you the success they have. And that's for me fundamental about a lot of our sport, and especially in soccer, and it's something we're doing here at the university now, is fastidious about administration and reporting and follow-up. And knowing what's going on off-field is the most important thing. So winning the Australian client was very powerful for us because what it started to do was give us a very interesting confidence in the market. And on the back of that, we've built a very big client base. Today, we look after most of SAB's Castle Lager spend. So they have a program called Castle Superstars, which we look after and manage, which is a really exciting program. It's into its third season now. When they came to see us about an idea that they had that was 4 years ago, today the thing really works and it's very successful. Coca-Cola is one of our clients. We do a lot of work for Coca-Cola. We roll out what's called a Copa under 15 soccer tournament now into 52 regions across South Africa. Last year we ran an event every week for 13 weeks, 4 events a weekend in 4 different locations. If you can think of the logistics and that, what's required, it's a very big thing. McDonald's, we do a lot of work for McDonald's and strategy work for them. Nike, we looked after the Chance, we looked after the Manchester United Premier Cup. Supersport United, I started the Youth Academy. I was involved in the club's restructure in 2000. It's still a client of mine that I'm very, very involved in. The Multi-Choice Disky League that you've seen now, Multi-Choice in Naspers, is one of our clients. We've been fundamentally involved in the structure of that league, how it looks. And we've just bought the prize for the team that wins. Next weekend's the final. The winning team will go, the final's on the 28th. 4 teams left in the competition. The team that wins that league will go to Holland for 8 days. Completely unique package, 3 international matches against Dutch teams, just completely different. And the exciting thing for me is the work we do is completely different. Often a client will come to us with a blank page and say, this is the idea, what do you think we should do? And we'll go away and build a specific package for them. I'm very big on international, I'm very big on a big prize in certain of the client strategy because that's what sells. That's what hooks media, that's what makes people really excited about certain things. So for these players, for the PSL Disky team that win, they're going to go to Holland for 8 days and have the most unbelievable experience. Maybe some of them have never been overseas, but we're creating a platform that some of them may be seen or taken overseas. So we do a lot of that kind of work. You know, people say, well, what do you do and what's the nature of your work? So we do a few things. One is a lot of football strategy work. So where brands will come and say, we want to sponsor something, we want to be involved in football, and the first questions we'll ask, well, is it CSR, what is your ROI, what is the return on investment that you're looking for? So to build a program that we know is measurable, because today a lot of programs are just guys spend money and they don't know how to measure them, so that becomes quite difficult. We do a lot of work in Africa, doing work in Zambia, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Ghana, Ivory Coast. And that's a huge growth area for football, as I'm sure you're seeing. Most of you are watching AFCON and you see Ivory Coast and Ghana, West Africa is a huge talent pool of players, more so than in South Africa, unfortunately. We also have a very big presence now in New Zealand. We've just opened a business for Zone New Zealand because we see a lot of football talent that's opportunity. And we're very entrepreneurial. We'll take risk where we can because for me, that's important. To take risks, because someone took a risk with me. I want to take a few risks all the time with people, with players, whoever we can try and do something with, because everybody needs a chance. And I remember that Saturday sitting there talking to Sean to try and start a business. He said, right, here's your chance, you start a business. So if somebody brings me an idea, I always try and help. That's critical. I try as much as I can to connect people with each other. And that's something you should think about too. If someone comes to you with an idea, are there other people that you could help connect? There's nothing better than taking this person and that person and helping them connect and become something. Very important for me, always know how to say thank you to that kind of stuff. I get really irritated when I'm introduced to people and they'll go on and do something and no one comes back and refers back to me or follows up or tells me something about it, because for me, I wouldn't do that. I would always let them know, say thank you, keep them in the loop. Some people are funny, they cage you like that, they'll steal a relationship and run on. But one thing for certain, if people behave like that, eventually it catches up with them. You can't behave like that all the time. You've got to have a particular behavior, and also you've got to be confident when you jump up in the morning. What do people think about you? Your own brand presence is important. Not everybody's going to like you. Never going to be the case. Sometimes you've got to make a hard decision that upsets someone. That's the way, that's the nature. But at the end of the day, you've got to know you've got people you can trust, and people around you that believe in the plan. Because without people, you can't build a business and you can't do anything. Can't do anything. And most importantly for me now, one of the exciting things that I've developed for myself, one is I have my own business coach that I started 3 years ago, because I needed also to be pushed into who asks me the uncomfortable questions, who pushes me. She's a lady, Adele, that I started with 3 years ago. I meet her on a monthly basis, and it's a fantastic opportunity to be developed. I also have a business mentor, in fact, who lives in Cape Town, so I often meet with him. And that's another thing to think about. Who are the people along the way that you can seek advice from? It's not always good to be family or somebody different, somebody that can come from the left field and ask you difficult questions and make you feel a bit uncomfortable, because sometimes in business you need that. You get stuck in a particular way and you think this is the way, but it doesn't always mean that you're on the right path. So you need people around you that are going to shake you a little bit, that are going to ask you uncomfortable questions. It's very, very important. So if you don't have that around you, try and think, can you find that? Who are those people? What can you do? And in summary, because I would like to take some questions if there are, I want to just talk about two important traits that for me have allowed me to be successful, I think, in this business. Number one is obsession. I'm completely obsessed about football. And you can ask anybody and anyone that's involved with me, it's 24/7. It's non-stop. I'll jump up at 2 in the morning with an idea and I'll start typing a mail about something and something. And I'm fastidious about that kind of stuff. It will not stop. If I don't know something, I'll ask, but I'm obsessed about football. And not about the score, who won the FA Cup in 1982, who scored the winning goal. That doesn't obsess me at all. I'm obsessed about the structure of the game. I'm obsessed about what makes it better and what can we constantly be doing to be better. Because it's interesting, often I'll go and meet people for the first time and say, what do you do? Oh, I'm in football. Oh, amazing. Who won the FA Cup in 1983? And I'm saying, I don't know. They go, but you're in football, you should know that kind of thing. And for me, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Why does that matter? I've picked certain things in the sport that matter to me, and that's the fundamental change and the ability to make environments better. So I'm completely obsessed about what I do. I love football, of course. I don't watch football all day, every day. I never get the time. On the weekends, I very seldom see a game, but I'll always follow the scores. I'll make sure I know who the managers are of certain teams. I'll make sure that I'm on top of some of that information, but I can't know everything, so I need to pick at what I can know and what I enjoy. Yes, I love to watch football all the time. I love to watch live football. That's one of the most exciting things for me, and I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of games, to real amazing stadiums and experience live football, because that's special. It doesn't happen all the time. But even local football, and I'll go, like yesterday I was at the Marty's Academy training, that's what makes me crazy. That's what I love the most, to see a little 13-year-old player. There's Dalen, one of him. I remember when he was 13 at the Supersport Academy, and that was 10 years ago almost, 8 years ago. And I've been very involved in various different players in their careers. It's very exciting to allow someone to achieve their goal in football. It's very competitive, it's a very difficult space to be in. I think that as South Africans, we're under a lot of pressure to compete globally, and even in Africa now we're behind, but I suppose that's a conversation for another day. So just to summarize, focus, absolutely critical thing all the time, asking, am I focused on what I want to do? Am I enjoying what I do? Very important. Are you obsessed about what you do? Is it an obsession and a complete drive, and are you driven? Are you driven to do that? And one thing just to end off, don't be scared to make mistakes. And failure is not the end of the world, because we all get beaten down. It's getting up and being able to continue to run, which is the most important thing. So, in summary, firstly, thanks for having me. It's always nice to tell a story. Hopefully there's a couple of questions. And if not, I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.